Today's video is brought to you by the subscribe button and the notification bell. Don't forget to click both of them down below. Hey, what's up guys? Joker here, and I hope you're all doing well. Today we are going to be taking a look at our first add-in board card for the Navi GPUs with the PowerColor Red Devil 5700 XT card, which is available now today as of the day that you are seeing this video go live here on the channel, which is August 15th. 2019. These cards are meant to be available now, as I said, so I will put links down in the description below. Once I can find them listed over on e-tailers like Amazon and Newegg, I'll have those provided for you guys down there. As far as pricing is concerned on the 5700 XT from PowerColor, it is going to be selling for $439, although there is a limited edition for $449, but that's only going to be available for like the very first run, so as soon as those are sold out, they're going to be gone. It's the same exact card as the regular edition. The only difference is that it comes with an RGB mouse pad and like a sticker and stuff. So if it's worth it to you for the extra $10, you can get an RGB mouse pad if you are one of the early buyers here, which is not terrible, honestly. 10 bucks for an RGB mouse pad isn't really too bad at all. But $439, that's the realistic price of this actual card, which I will be comparing in this video up against the reference model 5700 XT, which we already tested here on the channel, and also a Gigabyte RTX 2060 Super card. It's one of their gaming OC cards, which actually clocks the same as the reference model, so we're going to be using that anyway because it's got a triple fan cooler, as just like it does on the PowerColor Red Devil card. So we can take a look at that now. It's an absolutely monstrous triple fan heatsink cooler, and it is going to be a triple slot card as well. Our Gigabyte 2060 Super is actually only a dual slot, but this one's a triple slot, so it's got a really massive heatsink on this thing to help cool down the Navi 5700 XT, which I think most of us have been waiting for since the reference models. Better cooling, more quiet operation, and it definitely does handle that very well, and we'll talk about temperatures and everything very soon. In addition to the triple fan heatsink, you can see we've got a nice full-size backplate on here with the Red Devil logo, which is RGB, as well as the logo on the side of the card. By default, it will light up to red, but this year they have decided to go full-on RGB, so you can customize the look of the card to your heart's content. Otherwise, it's pretty much a monochrome black and gray affair, which should fit in any system. And with the RGB, you can completely disable that if you want to, or go through on any of the profiles, and you can set different static colors. You could set it to like color waves and things like that, and pretty much any color you can think of in the 15 bajillion colors available in the RGB color space. I'm sure that's the accurate amount. I did want to note that the rear I/O, where you can see we've got 3 DisplayPort and 1 HDMI, so no really big surprises there, but I did want to note that there is a red light back here which does illuminate the rear I/O, which is actually pretty nice for plugging things in. I do just wish that the red light was either able to be turned off or was also controllable via the RGB software, the Devil Zone software from PowerColor, so that you could change the LED on that as well, because it does actually show through on the inside of your system a little bit. It kind of reflects off of the heatsink, so you can kind of see that red LED there, even no matter what the colors you've set in the software for the rest of the RGB on the card. The rear I/O is unaffected, and since you can kind of see that in the system, I do wish that it could, like I said, either be disabled or have the color adjusted like the rest of everything on here. But the lighting is on the back is still actually a nice touch. Makes it a little easier to find the HDMI and DisplayPort connectors. As far as inside the card is concerned, they've actually done some work here on the PCB. So the PowerColor Red Devil card is featuring a 10-phase VRM versus the 7-phase VRM that we'll be seeing on the reference model, as well as any of the other partner cards that are using the reference PCB. So 10-phase versus 7-phase VRM, that means that it is able to push up to 300 watts if you're able to push it there. By default, the card was in its OC mode. There was a multi-BIOS switch between the OC mode and the silent mode. The OC mode is to target 220 watts. The silent mode is for 180 watts. And honestly, you don't really need the silent mode because the thing runs really cool all on its own, even just on the OC mode. I never saw on the stock fan curve, I ever saw it go over 1400 RPM, which was basically whisper quiet. So you don't really need to use the silent mode. You could pretty much just leave it on the OC mode all the time, and it's going to be very quiet and run pretty cool as well. You'll see it here running in a side-by-side on the F1 2019 benchmark. I had this running for 30 minutes. I ran it on the reference model as well as the aftermarket Red Devil card here from PowerColor. It just runs on a loop over and over and over again for 30 minutes, and at the end of that, on the stock fan curves, the Red Devil card ended up getting up to 71 degrees Celsius, and as I said, fan speed only around 1400 RPM, which is pretty much inaudible. You really have to be listening for it, and you'd have to like take the side panel off your case to really actually be able to hear it. With the side panel on, I could barely hear anything audible over like a low hum. On the reference card, that was definitely not the case, as even though the fan was only at 2100 RPM, that blower style was definitely audible. I could hear that quite a bit. It was loud. It sounds like a hairdryer inside of your system, and that was running up at 90 degrees Celsius. So the fan only has one fan, was working harder than the 3 fans on the PowerColor card, and the difference there is almost 20 degrees Celsius, operating pretty much up at around max temp of 90 degrees Celsius. So that's really the main thing that you're gaining here with the PowerColor Red Devil card, is it's going to run cooler, it's going to run quieter, and you're not going to need to, I should say, work those fans as much. You can leave it at the stock fan curve and it's going to be absolutely fine. I did mess around with the MSI afterburner curve, which you can turn on in there, and that did see my fan spinning up to around 2200 RPM, but it also dropped my temperature down to around 63 degrees Celsius, so I wasn't really complaining about that too much, and they were still very quiet. So if it's more important to you to get your temperatures even lower, down to around 60 degrees C, you can do it with this card. You're just going to need to go ahead and adjust the fan curve to allow them to run a little bit higher than what they would even on the OC mode of the card right out of the box. With all of that out of the way, let's get into our game testing. So for all of my comparisons here, we were running on the same system. It's a closed system with an i7 8700K up at 4.8 gigahertz, along with 16 gigabytes of DDR4 memory at 3200 megahertz. I was running on the latest drivers for both NVIDIA as well as AMD. So for AMD, we are using 19.8.1, and for NVIDIA, it was 431.60. I did have the power limits on both of those cards increased as far as they would go, and the fans were left at their stock settings. I didn't really mess around with manual overclocking here too much. I mean, I did mess around with it, but as far as testing this video is concerned, we're just testing its stock. We're not overclocking or anything like that. There are some limitations built in by AMD for how far you can actually push the Navi GPU, so you really can't go that much further than what these cards are doing on their own, up around 2 gigahertz, you know, on the core. As far as memory is concerned, you can push it from 875 up to around 900 megahertz, which will net you maybe another 2 to 3 FPS here or there. So nothing really incredible. It's not a ton of extra performance you're getting if you do try to overclock these cards. So they're not really great for tweaking unless you wanted to get into custom BIOS and things. And in that case, if you did, I guess this would be a good card for it, because they do have the multi-BIOS switch. So if anything goes wrong flashing the video BIOS, and you need to switch it back, then at least you got the backup there for that. So overclocking headroom, there's not a ton here, but as you'll see, the card is actually running really well at stock settings and actually does quite a bit better than the 2060 Super in pretty much every game that I tested here. Taking a look at the 1080p numbers first, we'll talk about the average FPS and then the 1% lows, and of course I did test at 1440p as well. You're probably not going to want to go much higher than that in terms of resolution with these cards, although I have tested ultra-wide on the 5700 XT reference model, and this card can actually handle ultra-wide pretty well, as long as you gauge your expectations for probably on high settings in most newer titles, although obviously a little bit older games going back like 2015 with like something like Rainbow Six Siege, you'd be absolutely fine playing it ultra-wide at ultra, but 4K is definitely going to be out of the realm of where you really want to be targeting with these cards, unless you're playing some very, very old games that are not demanding at all. But again, coming back to 1080p and the average FPS here, you can see that all of these cards here, whether it's the 2060 Super or either of the 5700 XT variants, 1080p is going to be pretty easy to run in most games at ultra settings. The one exception maybe here is Metro Exodus, which is staying just above 60, and actually all 3 cards tied at 61 frames per second. But the Red Devil 5700 XT is definitely better than the Gigabyte 2060 Super in pretty much every game, only losing in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which is known to favor NVIDIA, and then of course tying in Metro Exodus. And between the reference model and the Red Devil card, they kind of trade blows, although it does lean towards the Red Devil card in most of them, as you would expect. In most instances, it's only by a couple of frames per second here, because the 5700 XT, the reference model, even though it is running a lot hotter and louder it can boost itself pretty well up to around 2 gigahertz, the same as the Red Devil 5700 XT. So really what you're gaining here at the end of the day is a cooler and quieter experience, and obviously your results may vary on just how much you can overclock it, but I wouldn't expect to go too much higher over 2 gigahertz, maybe 2.1 gigahertz on the 5700 XT, whether it's Red Devil or a reference card. Going and taking a look at the 1% lows now here, you can see again, 1080p, pretty manageable for all of these GPUs. Metro Exodus and Shadow of the Tomb Raider does struggle a bit, but we're not really seeing anything too crazy from what we saw on the average FPS numbers. And looking at 1440p, you could see that a couple of these cards do struggle in some games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Metro Exodus, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and Division 2 are kind of close to that 60 FPS mark. But in most of these games, you can go in there and you can tweak settings. So if you're just watching this on the standpoint of wanting to get a graphics card for around $430, $440, these cards can definitely do 1440p. No questions asked. On some games, sure, like Metro Exodus, you'll want to tweak down some options, maybe play it up at high or very high. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, there's like one killer option in that game, like the volumetric clouds, and same is true for Division 2. You knock that down by one setting from ultra to high, and boom, you're getting 20 FPS more. So 1440p is still going to be very playable for any of these cards, so you really can't go wrong with any of them. And as you'll see that there in the 1% lows as well. Some of these do get pretty darn low, like Shadow of the Tomb Raider and Metro Exodus, but those are just from really demanding titles, especially Metro Exodus on Ultra. But you can tweak a couple of options for that, and you'll be smooth sailing on any of these cards here at 1440p. So really my big takeaway from all of the performance here is that the Red Devil 5700 XT is an excellent card. You've got the multi-BIOS switch on there, which is nice to have if you are a serious tweaker and you want to get into messing around with VBIOS. You've got a backplate on there, triple slot card, triple fan heatsink. Going to be able to keep this card probably just as cool as any of the other coolers out there, any of the really top-end coolers for the Navi GPUs. You probably can't do much better than what PowerColor is doing here on the Red Devil card. It's quiet and it keeps the thing just running cool and quiet, and that's really the main reason to go for this over the reference model, which is hot and loud. Although the performance difference is probably going to be negligible out of the box, this is going to run cooler and quieter. And then when it comes between the 5700 XT and the 2060 Super, I would lean towards the 5700. It got a little bit better performance in most of the games that I tested here, which is a small sample set. It's only 8 games. If you were to go run it on like 30-40 games, if you were Steve over at Hardware Unboxed and did something like that, then you might get a little bit better of a picture. But for my testing, it seems like the 5700 XT is a faster card than the 2060 Super, and they both cost about the same thing. So, pick your sides there. You can go one way or the other. You really can't go wrong with either of them for 1080p or 1440p gaming. Pick the side that you like, and FreeSync or G-Sync maybe is a variable for you, or preference on software or something like that with NVIDIA's versus AMD's Radeon software. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on the Red Devil 5700 XT. As I said at the start, I will leave a link down in the description below once I could find it listed online. As of the time of me recording this, I could not find it listed yet, but when there is one available, I will post a link for you guys. So if you enjoyed this video and learned anything new, don't forget to leave a thumbs up on it down below. Subscribe if you're not already, and if you've been here for a while, please ring that notification bell. That way you never miss a video as soon as it goes up live here on the channel. And I'll catch you guys tomorrow for another video. Ciao.